Hello and welcome to live breaking news here on the CBN YouTube channel, CBN News. And President Biden has announced he will be dropping out of the presidential race for 2024. This is obviously big time, earth-shattering news here in the political world, something we have not seen in many news cycles, certainly not in modern history. Joining me now to break it all down, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody and host of DC Debrief podcast on CBN, John Stolnis. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Here we are.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, David, starting with you here. Your reaction to what we saw. And actually, you know what, David, before we go to you, let's go ahead and just show the statement. Crutch, if you can put that up there. That he announced it via X and hasn't made a actual statement yet as far as in person. He just posted this, and there's the statement there. And then he followed up on his personal X page at Joe Biden, said, "My fellow Democrats, I've decided not to accept the nomination and to focus all my energies on my duties as president for the remainder of my term. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president, and it's been the best decision I've made today. I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this." I mean, a lot to unpack here, David. So first of all, just your reaction here to what's happened.
Well, I don't even know where to start. I mean, we're living in historic times. We know that. I don't think that's any shock to anyone. We thought this would happen. We've talked about it. It's now happened. It was just a matter of time. There's so much to unpack here. Why don't we start with this? The timing of all this. On a Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m., we understand, I say 3 p.m., excuse me, 2 p.m., I'm looking exactly at the timestamp. This comes out at 2 p.m. We're now getting word by White House reporters, one from NBC News, saying that Biden was all systems go, continuing in the race as of this morning. By 1:45 p.m., he told his staff he had changed his mind and he's out. So quick little math here. I'm not the best at clock math, but if you do it at you change your mind at 1:45 and you're out with an official statement at 2 o'clock, how does that work exactly? I like to a little bit know more on the TikTok on that. So there's that. The Kamala thing. All right. So she's going to be clearly looks like she's going to be the nominee here for the Democrats. And to be clear, what we have here now is an open convention. We don't have a contested convention. So let's just be clear on the vernacular. We do have technically an open convention because there will be no nominee technically like Biden going in. I mean, it's technically open. That means what Kamala has to do now is wrangle up a majority of the 4,000 delegates that will vote for her in a roll call vote coming up at the convention, or maybe in a virtual roll call. We're not quite sure if it's going to happen exactly before the convention or not. So it appears it's going to be Kamala. It would only be a contested convention if someone, wait for it, contests Kamala Harris on this nomination. Why in the world would Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, any of these folks contest Kamala Harris? For a number of reasons. Why don't we just start off by the fact that if you want to attain higher office and go for the presidency of the United States, why would you blow it against Trump in what appears to be potentially a landslide for Trump, or at least a pretty good shot at Trump becoming the next president? So why would you waste it here? That doesn't make any sense for a couple months of a shot against Trump, because the cake feels like it's a bit baked at this point. But beyond that, it just doesn't make any sense, because Democrats, and Democrats do this. They play identity politics, and you're going to tell me that a white governor, Gavin Newsom, white male governor, or a white female governor is going to try and take on what could be historic, the first black female president in United States history? Democrats don't do that. There's no way they're going to do that. And already we're seeing that the Progressive Caucus has come out and supported Kamala Harris. So I just think it's now we're just on a glide path for Kamala Harris to be the nominee for the Democrats.
Yeah, and John, what do you think changed here because Joe Biden seemed to be hanging on. He seemed to be saying, hey, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do this. Then we saw the media really turn on him after the debate, which was by all accounts, not a good debate for President Biden at all. Disastrous, in fact. Obviously, it's kind of led to him withdrawing from the race. And then kind of gradually top-notch Democrats came in there. So what changed in his thinking? I mean, did he just get pressured by all of these forces, or what do you think? Oh, we can't hear you, John. I don't know if he's...
I'm sorry, my fault. Yep, I was coughing.
Okay.
So guys, cough button.
There we go.
Earlier, over these last couple of weeks, you have seen the real difference makers in the Democratic Party, the real heavyweights, start to publicly, if not come right out and say that the president should take himself off the top of the ticket. Then they're at least doing it through the media, right? It's been leaked that Senator Schumer went to go see President Biden in Rehoboth Beach and implore him to drop out of the race. We've been hearing different reports that President Obama has been doing the same thing. Nancy Pelosi has been doing the same thing. Of course, there's been the people in his inner circle, the White House senior staff who, as David mentioned, I think still believed that he was going to continue running, that he wasn't going to step out of the race. And it's one of those things where if you're President Biden, you have to make it sound like leaving the race is the absolute last thing on your mind until it actually becomes the decision that you have to make. Because once you open the door a crack, it's going to get kicked in. So it's not surprising that he was so forceful up until the last minute, because once you leave open the possibility, then you have to then go ahead and take the plunge and get out. But it just seemed as though enough donors had come out, enough of the high-priced donors had come out. George Clooney came out, guys, and said it was time for President Biden to drop out. So, I mean, when you've lost George Clooney, you've lost the party, friends. So I think at the end of the day,
especially after the fundraiser, right, John? I mean, it was like 2 minutes after he just raised $30 million for the guy.
Right, exactly. It was literally like a week after that huge fundraiser that he did, that George Clooney came out and said that he needed to step aside. So I'm telling you, in Aaron Sorkin's wildest West Wing script ideas, there has been 3 seasons worth of plot lines here in the last 2 months of this presidential campaign. It's absolutely crazy, and this is one of those pieces of news that's not surprising and yet shocking that we are actually here.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a few interesting things left out of this statement. Notably, he didn't really say why he was stepping out, David. And so I'm wondering what is going to be the eventual. He's gonna have to come up with something to say. He can't just say, you know what, just feel like hanging out now. I mean, like, he's got to come up with some rationale here. And I'm interested on your take on which way you think he's going to go.
Well, I think the issue, I think what he'll do is he'll mention at some point, if he has a press conference about this, who knows if he will, he's probably just going to make another statement. You got to say something about the age factor. Now, once again, if you go down the mental acuity road, which I don't think he's going to go down, I think he's too proud to do it. But if you go down that road, then the obvious follow-up question is, well, why in the world are you still president of the United States?
Yes.
I mean, so I think if you open up that can of worms, then you're in for some serious question about why you're finishing out your term in the first place. So he may be able to get away with it by just saying, look, I'm getting up there in years. I make no secret about that, and kind of leave it generic. And that might be really the best play for him. But look, the Trump campaign was planning for Kamala Harris. They've been plotting a strategy. They're already going to be up with an ad in Pennsylvania here in the next 24 hours, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, talking in essence about not only the fact that Kamala is tied to Biden and all the policy stuff, but beyond that, they want to know, well, hold on for a second. You were complicit in all of this. In other words, Joe Biden, we knew he had mental acuity issues. It was seen at the debate, but we knew it beforehand. And Kamala, according to the Trump campaign, will say she was covering for him, that she knew it all along. And to me, that's going to be a big line of attack, I think, from the Trump campaign. They're going to say, wait a minute, you can't trust her. She's lying to you. She knew all along that he was in no shape to be president. And yet, I guess she's a loyal foot soldier, but at what expense? For the expense of the country. So I think you're going to see that unfold a little bit.
And John, I think the polling here, this is going to be certainly interesting to look at these latest polls, whatever comes out. It's going to take a couple days, I guess, for the news to settle in, right? And for us to get a good idea of what's going on with the polls. But obviously, Democrats are pushing this because they were looking at the numbers and seeing this was not adding up well for Joe Biden. How do things look for what we know so far about any hypothetical polls of a Trump versus Harris matchup? What do we know about how those polls look?
It depends on the state, and I think you need to look at the swing state numbers. Those are the most important ones. The numbers in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Virginia, all these other different places. Really, the blue wall states, essentially that President Biden won in 2020, that they need to win again here in 2024. And so far, most of the states, it still seems as though President Trump has the advantage. In some states, it's maybe a little larger. In some states, a little smaller, but still inside the it's still inside the margin of error in some of those states, and in other states it's a little bit outside. But my point with my thinking on the polling is that even though Kamala Harris ran for president 4 years ago and was ultimately beaten out by Joe Biden, she hasn't had a high profile here in the Biden presidency. She has really spent much of the last couple of years since the Dobbs decision, spending a lot of her time focusing on the abortion issue, going around the country, talking about women's rights and the rights of their bodies, and pushing back against the pro-life message out there, and they've really been using her as their main mouthpiece for that. So now she's got I think the challenge that faces the Trump campaign here is that the American people haven't really seen much of her the last 4 years. So I don't know, like, if she comes out and you see her against Donald Trump going back and forth on the campaign. Now, if it does turn out to be her, the numbers might look different in a few weeks once she's back onto the stage. And I think the same can be said for any other Democratic candidate, especially the governors. I don't think you can take what a Pennsylvanian thinks of Gretchen Whitmer and how she would do in a race against Donald Trump with any kind of certainty, because who in suburban Philadelphia knows anything about Gretchen Whitmer, right? They know they're well known in their own states, but that's where getting on the national stage. I think you need to wait a few weeks before we know who it is. And even if it is Kamala Harris, the fact that she hasn't had a really prominent role in the Biden administration, I think the polling numbers are still fluid. I don't think they're solid. I think they could go either way. She could look a lot worse in 2 or 3 weeks. She could look better in 2 or 3 weeks. So I think the point is that for the Trump campaign, if you're wondering, like, is this a good decision? Was this good? If you're a Democrat, was this good for us? Was this the right thing to do? I think this is what the Trump campaign didn't want to see happen personally. I think they would have preferred to see Joe Biden stay in the race. Now this launches, and maybe it is too little too late, but there's uncertainty now, and there's going to be more energy among the base that could really upset things here over the next few weeks.
I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, because John said it removes a huge obstacle for Democrats, which was the fact that everyone was talking about, is Joe Biden able to even function as a president right now? Mm-hmm. That's a huge advantage for Trump, and it essentially just gets taken away from the table there, from the argument. And so for whatever flaws Kamala Harris has that, like you said, John, a lot of people don't know about any of these flaws. So if they can kind of just, and remember, you are going to see, most likely, knowing the leanings of the general mainstream media, you are going to see a charm offensive for Kamala Harris like you've probably never seen before. I mean, just based on what I've seen in history and how you guys are talking about how they like to have these, historic things and they focus on them. I expect to see a lot of that. What do you think, David?
I 100% agree with both of you. And the Trump campaign wanted Biden to stay in. They didn't want to see Kamala Harris. They think they can be Kamala Harris, but they didn't really want this situation. Why? Well, it goes to both of your points. I'll throw a third one in there. So you've got, let's recap. I think number one, you've got energy. You've gone from an 80, what is he, 82? I can't even remember. He's 82, but we know about his mental acuity issues. You go from that to a 59-year-old, energetic Kamala Harris. That is a positive for them. The second positive, Dan, as you said, you're going to see a charm offensive by the media to basically say history in the making potentially with the first Black female president. That is going to be a huge storyline, especially in liberal media circles that'll love to tell that story. That's number two. And number three, the abortion issue. And so you put all three of those together. And there's got to be definitely more trepidation today in the Trump campaign than there was 24 hours ago. I don't think there's any question about that. Do I think Kamala Harris can win the presidency? Obviously, there's always a possibility of that. But having said that, let's remember, she's going to have to answer for questions about what she knew about Biden's mental state, number one. She was called the border czar the borders are by Joe Biden, she's going to have to own the immigration issue, which is polling just next to the economy in essence. And then she owns everything else under the sun as it relates to all of the policies that Biden has put forward and passed. So she's got her work cut out for her. There's no doubt about it. But I do think if you look at some of the positives, it's really the best case scenario for Democrats at this point that they could hope for. Some breaking news within the breaking news. It just seems like it just continues to roll on us here. President Clinton and Secretary Clinton out with a statement now, both endorsing Kamala Harris. So here we go, gentlemen. I won't read the whole thing, but here's the headline here at the end. We are honored to join the president in endorsing Vice President Harris, and we'll do whatever we can to support her. So to quote a Broadway show, you can't stop the beat from Hairspray. That's where we're at. You can't stop the beat. It will be Kamala Harris. Let's not make any bones about this. This idea that if anybody wants to say there's going to be other people potentially running, look, not going to happen. Not when you have President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, Joe Biden, and I'm waiting for Barack Obama and others to do exactly the same thing. And this will just roll on into the convention, and Kamala will be the nominee.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons for Democrats to do it that way. I mean, the money being a huge factor as well. I think it gets a little messy when you say, hey, all these hundreds of millions of dollars were raised for the Biden-Harris campaign, and then, oh, we want to give it to candidate X over here. I don't think it's that simple. So this clears a lot of that up. And also, when you do something like this close to the election, you want to have some sort of, I don't know, a feeling of familiarity there for the country, so that it doesn't feel too just like we're plucking people out of left field here. And so it does seem to make, as far as the options that were in front of them, I mean, obviously this is not optimal for Democrats to have their current president step down. But John, where do you expect to see the focus of attack come from the, I mean, of course, we're all assuming this, but as David said, it looks like, I mean, this isn't where she's been handed over the crown, right? We have to actually go through a process here, and then she'll get it. But let's just, for argument's sake here, assume that it is going to be Kamala. First of all, any thoughts on who she would pick for a VP? I mean, it's pretty early in that game. I don't know that anybody's really considered that. I know I hadn't really considered that. We all kind of thought Biden might chop it.
I've got a name for a long time.
All right, you got names. All right, let's just start there.
But John, go, John.
Go ahead. I want to hear this. I want to hear who the possible VPs are.
I want to hit that. I want to hit that in a second, but I want to just double back on something you had said just a second ago, Dan. And I think it has to do with and David mentioned this a little bit earlier, the fact that now it's going to be a blitz to the Democratic National Convention in a month, right? You've had this presidential campaign that's been going on for 2 years now, if we can be honest about it. And now all of a sudden it's been completely flipped up on its head. And, David, you had said, well, why would any Democrat want to enter this presidential race and ruin their chances, say, like 8 years from now? And I think the fact that they're only going to have 2, 3, 4 weeks, really, essentially, before the Democratic National Convention gives them an out if they lose. They can look back and they can say, I didn't even have a chance to really campaign. I stepped up for my party, and it's a good way to get yourself introduced on the national stage, and it can kind of springboard you into the next election cycle, perhaps. So I can see a lot of positives, a lot of reasons why a Democratic governor may decide that they would be interested in it. That being said, it does sound like Kamala Harris is the runway is being cleared for her. And to me, the candidate that makes the VP candidate that makes the most sense is the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who is from a moderate state. I come from Pennsylvania. I grew up in suburban Southeast Philadelphia, Dan, as you know, and it's a very purplish type area. They have voted for Democrats and Republicans in the past. Pennsylvania may be the most important state in this election for the Democrats. They have to win Pennsylvania. Shapiro polls very highly in Pennsylvania, and he's seen as a moderate there. He polls pretty well among Republicans in Pennsylvania. So he gives them a really good shot in that state. And he's on TV a lot too. He knows how to talk on the air. He's very articulate. He knows the issues. And so if you wanted to balance somebody like Kamala Harris, who I think most independent voters, Republican voters, the voters on the fence would maybe see as a little bit more progressive, a little bit further to the left, Shapiro is a guy who would even that ticket out a little bit and maybe bring it back towards the center a little bit more, which would appeal to some of the voters in some of the swing states like we mentioned.
So A few things. To the first point of what John said, here's the problem with that. I mean, I get the logic. I understand what you're saying. It gives them an out to say, hey, I didn't have the full shot. I get that. That makes sense. The problem is that that's not how the Democrats operate. The way the Democrats and the oligarchs in both parties, by the way, both parties have oligarchs, but the way the oligarchs operate in the Democrat Party is, in essence, this is, we stick together. This is what we do. And if you've got Clinton and you'll have Obama soon and Pelosi and all that, sure, where they're all going to come out and support Kamala. You don't want to be the guy or the gal, if you will, coming out against your party brass. That is not a good look, especially coming just a couple of months before the general election when you're trying to galvanize and come together after this big thrown for a loop situation at the end. I just think you don't look good within the party. Now, you might say, okay, well, who cares about the party? It's about the voters. Yes and no, right? It's about the voters. But let's be clear. The party brass, it means something to make sure you're playing the game. You have to play an inside game and an outside game. And if you're going to go ahead and run for the nomination with everybody else for Kamala, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. It doesn't make sense. It's an inside game that you have to play. You might not want to play it, and you might have a reason to not play it, but you still got to play it. And so that's my view on that. John's exactly right. I mean, Shapiro is going to be right at the top of the list. You're going to hear a lot of words, moderate Democrat. Take it with a grain of salt. He's a pretty classic liberal. But having said that, and John, you know more. You're on the ground up there more. But he's got the businessman skills. You know, he's got that guy. You know, balances budgets. He's. I know he had that situation with the Catholic priest up there, and he's pretty tough in terms of how he handled that situation. I mean, he's got some moderate cards to play, and because he's from a battleground state, he'd probably be the guy that Kamala Harris picks. Having said that, if all things are equal, I think Andy Bashir is really the guy that she should take. Of course, Kentucky, he's the governor of Kentucky, now a two-time Democrat governor of Kentucky, not a swing state, clearly. So it's not going to get you anything there. And that's why I think Shapiro might have the edge. But having said that, if all things are being equal and you're just looking at kind of like the overall record of where this country is now culturally, whether it be immigration, otherwise, I think Bashir gives you more to fight with on some of the cultural issues. And I don't think Shapiro gives you that. But having said that, they got to win Pennsylvania, and Shapiro's popular in Pennsylvania. So it would make sense for Shapiro to be the guy. We'll see.
Yeah. And as John said, the runway being cleared, David, you mentioned the Clintons announcing their support for Kamala Harris. We're starting to see this trickle in as well. The Congressional Black Caucus supports Kamala. I don't think that's any surprise there. But we'll update you whenever some more endorsements come in for Kamala. But again, assuming that Kamala is the one who is sort of crowned the next nominee for Democrats here by those Biden delegates, and the processes that are in place here for this, which is obviously an extremely rare thing to have an incumbent president step down in the midst of a campaign just months out. Where do you guys see the top attack lines? You mentioned, David, the border issue. She was the border czar. Which ones does the Trump campaign feel will have the most effectiveness to them?
Well, take your pick. And that's the good news for Trump campaign. It could be the economy. You can go down the list. But I do think immigration is probably where they're at. Remember, in 2016, Trump won the White House. Why? Immigration was a big deal. He made it a signature issue. He won the White House. In 2020, he did not have to make it a signature issue. Border crossings were down. It wasn't as much of a toxic issue. It was an issue, but it wasn't a plain like it was in 2016. He lost. In 2024, here we are again. Immigration is a huge issue, and he's winning again. There are the parallels right there. I think the winning ticket is immigration. It's always been immigration. Kamala Harris is going to make some sort of PDF argument about the economy and the numbers and X, Y, and Z. But let's remember, a lot of those numbers came after COVID. In other words, those jobs were coming back naturally because COVID was coming to an end. The Biden administration is trying to take credit for some of that economic recovery. I mean, can I just say it here on YouTube? Give me a colossal break. I mean, we're not stupid. Don't gaslight us. We know that would have come back regardless of who was in office because those jobs naturally would come back. So this idea that the economy is just coming up roses, because Biden brought us out of COVID. Any president would have brought us out of COVID once COVID ended. I mean, those jobs would have naturally come back. So anyhow, I think Kamala will be hit on all of that. And I'll be honest with you, get ready for all of the word salad mashups. And she's got plenty of them. And it's kind of cringeworthy. And I know he's already calling her Laughing Kamala, but beyond, or some people have called her Cackling Kamala. But the bottom line is, beyond the laugh, which is just kind of, goofy stuff, but beyond all of that, she has a way with words, and I don't mean that in the kindest way. I mean, once again, I'm not trying to beat up on her, so to speak, on this, but the truth of the matter is that she has been a word salad. It's everywhere, guys. And this is not, once again, let's not have the media do what they did the first time around, which is like all the conservative media said, look at what's going on with Joe Biden, look what's going on. And we were told, so many people were told that, like, hey, hold on, this isn't happening. You don't know what you're talking about. He's just fine. He's so bright and sharp. Well, we're going to have a gaslighting 2.0 with Kamala Harris. I mean, these clips are not taken out of context. I mean, she's got some real issues when she hits the national stage. We've seen it for the last 3+ years.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's as awkward as that is at sometimes for her, people are going to be comparing it to what they just saw with Joe Biden, and it's not going to be as bad. I mean, she's going to say some things that don't make sense. She's going to have some gaffes, but it's when you were watching Biden at times, you felt bad for him because you were like, this guy is too old, and this is just age that's hitting him, and it'll be a little bit different. If I had to guess, I don't know. We'll see how it lands with the American people and if they can make that an effective talking point. But I see now that the GOP is calling for Biden to resign. As you mentioned it earlier, David, that if indeed, and it looks like that's why Democrats were pushing to get him to step down just because of his mental acuity and just his sharpness on the stage. If that's the reason, then why are we going to have this man who's having these issues be sitting in the most powerful office in the world right now, as while things are really on the precipice? We've got, Israel at war right now. You've got all these other things in play. 5-6 months is a long time for him to be in office. So looks like GOP is calling for this. John, do you think, at least from a political perspective, is this a smart thing for them to focus their energy on at this time, or should they be turning more attention towards whoever the nominee is, likely Kamala?
Yeah, I think it's counterproductive for the Republicans to be going after Biden and saying he should resign. He's not the nominee anymore. He's not. I mean, are they saying it because they feel like it's the best thing for the country? Maybe not. It could just be politics. It's who knows exactly what it is. I think Democrats have made the argument that Biden is withdrawing from the race because they looked at the numbers and realized that there didn't seem to be a path for him winning. That's probably the first thing that they're going to say when he finally comes out and explains why he dropped out. The second thing is that he wasn't sure that he could do 4 more years, but that he has enough left in the tank to do 5 to 6 months. And so that'll be the line of attack. And whether you believe that or not, whether you agree with that or not, that's for you as an individual. But that's going to probably be the line of argument there in terms of whether or not he should resign from the presidency right now or not. Can he finish out the remainder of his term? And I think that's where most people. I'll tell you this: if they're going to spend a lot of their bullets on getting President Biden, that's probably a poor phrase to use here in the wake of the assassination attempt. So let me retract that. If they're going to use a lot of their rhetoric to try and push Joe Biden out of the White House now, I think they are wasting opportunities. I think they really need to be focusing on the Republicans. The Trump campaign should be focusing on how to defeat whoever it is becomes the Democratic nominee, because there's not going to be a lot of time to formulate something, to come up with something, to get something going. So.
But let me push back a little bit. See, I think what they're doing here, what Republicans are doing, is the Democrats are saying that Trump's a threat to democracy. So the Republicans will now counter that and say, wait a minute, Trump's a threat to democracy? You just took your guy off the ballot, even though voters said something differently. And as a matter of fact, to that end, this is what Speaker Mike Johnson just said just minutes ago. He said this on X. At this unprecedented juncture in American history, here's the line. We must be clear about what just happened. The Democrat Party forced the Democrat nominee off the ballot just over 100 days before the election, having invalidated the votes of more than 14 million Americans who selected Joe Biden to the Democrat nominee for president. The self-proclaimed party of democracy has proven exactly the opposite. There you go. I mean, that's exactly what they're going to do, because they have to try and take the threat to democracy off the table. And this is their way of doing it. Will it be effective? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's above my pay grade. Go ahead.
Yeah, that is, I mean, it sounds like an effective talking point. I'm looking to see where else they're going to go. And we got this statement from MAGA PAC, which is obviously a pro-Trump PAC. Yeah. And they said Kamala Harris was in on it and said she lied and claimed Joe Biden is tireless and in good shape. So aside from just the issues, guys, it looks like they could use all of these, because remember, it was just a couple of weeks ago where, you know, the Joe Scarboroughs of the world and other Democrats were saying he's sharp as ever. And he's, you know, like you were saying, they're gaslighting on this. They were saying all this stuff. And then a couple weeks go by and they're pushing him out of office. So I think a lot of those things were said on tape. And so you're going to see those things on tape. And I think that's a way to keep Biden and where that was trending sort of in play here as we've got these last couple months left before the election. What do you guys? What's your reaction to that line of, I guess, attack from MAGA, the MAGA PAC there?
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly it's got its valid points. I think even the national media and Democrats were upset about the White House for not being forthcoming with how much the president maybe was struggling. But again, I kind of equate this to like people who were shocked that tobacco was harmful to your health. Like, can you not see the effects of can you not see with your own eyes what's been going on with President Biden, the fact that he hadn't had a lot of public events, that he had a smaller public schedule than any president we've seen in the last 20, 30 years since really the age of the internet. You know, it's just, yeah. So I think and I agree, you know, there's certainly, the White House was certainly gathering around Joe Biden. You know, they were huddling around Joe Biden. They were trying to protect him. They were trying to set him up for success to finish out the term. And I think if he hadn't decided to run for president, I got to say, when he announced that he was running for president, running for re-election, it surprised me, because I really did think when he ran in 2020, he did so because he wanted to stop Donald Trump from being reelected. And he would have felt like he did his job and then would have ceded to Kamala Harris or whoever the next Democrat would be. And at his age, I was surprised that he decided to do it again. And I think that you're clearly seeing that the rate at which he seems, if you look back to 4 years ago on the campaign trail, even then when he was still an older candidate than you would normally see, still much sharper, much more, you know, much louder, much more capable. And the difference between then and now, we know how the White House ages people. Look how it aged Barack Obama when he was in the White House. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's hard on young, healthy people, let alone people who are aging. So I feel like, yes, there's certainly a line of attack that MAGA can go after with Kamala Harris and really everybody in the Democratic Party, because this couldn't have been that well kept a secret. Everybody probably knew, at least the people in positions of power probably knew what was really going on. And so there's a lot of that I think you can spread around across the party.
Yeah, you know, it makes me think of, guys, do you recall right after the debate, there was a leaked video of Trump on the golf course? And he said it. He said, I heard we knocked him out. I heard we knocked him out. And so, I mean, that was just hours after the debate, to your point, John, about people on the inside circles knowing that this was just a matter of time. And I know, David, you were saying that as well. But, David, your reaction to this MAGA PAC statement that was sent out there saying Kamala Harris was in on it and so trying to tie all those things together?
They had already said for about the last couple of weeks that they were going to use this line of attack. They had already put it out there. They hadn't made an ad yet, but there was an ad coming out, and here it is. As a matter of fact, it's already airing. I say airing on social media. It's out on social media for sure. I guess that's where it is all now. By the way, there's some new reporting now. We understand that many White House aides, first found out about this, reading it on X, like all of us. So that's encouraging. Just kidding, being a little facetious. So there's that. Let me just say this, kind of stepping back from all this, where did this break down for Joe Biden? Let's be clear. At the beginning of this year, Joe Biden went to his aides and he said, I want to debate Trump. And they said, we don't want you to debate Trump. Bad idea. He's like, no, I want to debate Trump. Then as the months went on and the poll numbers got worse and they got concerned that the only way they could turn the trajectory of this campaign around is to debate, then the aides finally said, okay, you will have to debate him. I guess that's true. And so that's it. And so but here's the bottom line. If there was no debate, think about it. It's a totally different situation. The gaslighting would have gone on. We would not be here on a Sunday afternoon. We'd be out, whatever, playing cricket or something like that on a Sunday afternoon, even though I don't think any of us play cricket. I don't know what I'm talking about. But the bottom line is that he wanted to debate Trump. Well, guess what? Sometimes be careful what you ask for, because that is exactly what happened. And now he was in the predicament that he's no longer in because he's out of the race.
Yeah. I mean, the "Make My Day" clip I saw getting sent around, and that one didn't age particularly well. But
he made his day. Unfortunately,
I guess so. At that point. I guess so. Well, CBN's David Brody, chief political analyst. CBN's John Stolnis. Thanks for dropping by here on a Sunday. This breaking news. If you're just joining in, President Joe Biden has announced that he is not going to seek the presidency in 2024. He is dropping out of the campaign. He gave his endorsement to his vice president, Kamala Harris. We saw Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton chime in and say that they also support Kamala Harris. Black National Caucus, they supported Kamala Harris as well. So you're seeing people start to fall in line with Kamala Harris. So that looks like the direction things are going, although the process is in place. All that has to take place. The Biden delegates have to officially make that happen. And so that will be all happening in the days and weeks to come. And of course, you can catch all of the updates here on the CBN News YouTube channel and on cbnnews.com. Make sure you're checking out that daily. Make sure you can, and you can also check out the latest on the 700 Club tomorrow morning. Make sure you catch that. And right here on the CBN News channel on our YouTube page, you can check out great shows like News Watch each and every single day. Thanks so much for being here. God bless you all. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. Take care.